Yeah, that's her PPE. When I was in hospital after I had Patrick, so it was 48 hours after he was born, the midwife came in and said, we're just giving Patrick his heel prick test. So she explained it to me. She goes, you never get a call back. It's very, very rare that you get a call back. But when we got home, 10 days later, we did get a call back. We just need to run a few more tests. Can you please come to the hospital as soon as possible?
We had a paediatrician here in Geelong who'd been Josh's paediatrician since we'd moved down from Sydney. I was on an afternoon shift at the hospital and he rang and said, are you near a computer? I need you to look up this syndrome. And he said it was Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. And I read the paper that he'd referred me to, and it was like reading a paper written about Josh. It was extraordinary. It was a real sense of relief that perhaps after 16 years we would have some answers. And that we would be able to find out what Josh's diagnosis was.
I went to see a nephrologist. They'd identified that, yes, my kidneys were slowly failing and they were going to try and figure out what the cause was and get me prepared for the potential ultimate eventuation of a transplant. And that's when he applied for the genetic testing. And I finally got it done, and that's when I found out that, yeah, I had primary hyperoxaluria.
I remember getting the call and being advised that we would need to come in together, which raised alarms, and that we had to bring Noah with us. We were sat down and I had Noah on my lap at the time, and I do remember the main clinician telling us we have a clinical diagnosis and it's Niemann-Pick type C. And I had no idea what that meant. It was all sort of leading to the point of understanding that it was genetically inherited, that it was incurable, and there was nothing to be done.
The way the physicians described PKU to us was a whole lot of big words that I can't pronounce. They did draw some pretty significant diagrams on the whiteboard in front of us. And they pretty much said that his body doesn't tolerate protein. The one thing that sticks with me when Patrick was diagnosed was, if you don't treat this, he will be brain damaged.
She was very good at trying to break it down, but when you're coping with the bottom line of it's fatal and there's no cure, the other sort of explanations don't really matter in the moment.
He was only home for a few days. He would have been about 5.5 weeks old, and we realised he wasn't doing so well. So they decided to keep him at the Children's Hospital for 1 week in their intensive or their special care nursery. And that's when we came across our diagnosis by accident. One night, I remember it was probably around about 7 p.m. We picked up the file at the medical file, like in the folder that was in, like at the end of his cot or whatever. And we noticed, I noticed actually, there was a sheet, like it looked like a scanned sheet. And then I started to read it. So that was how we found out that Yusuf had Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. So it was 3 weeks that his diagnosis had been left in the file, or, was out there in the world, but that no one had thought to tell us about it.
Language when you're receiving a diagnosis is so important. The phrases that I narrowed in on in that room, intentionally or not, some had negative effects, and the go home and make memories was a phrase that stood out to me, that told me that there's nothing you can do as a parent. Your child's about to die. Go home, deal with it, and let me know when the first neurological symptoms happen. That's definitely not how it was said, but as I say, it's, how it's received. So I don't envy the doctors that have to deal with that. I don't know how I would say it.
The way we found out was really bad, but we're blessed that we found out on time so we can start all those processes for his therapy on time.
I think hope is so important, even when there's seemingly none.
I really love it when a doctor says, I don't know, but we'll find out. And not that it'll be okay, because maybe sometimes it's not okay. That to say, you're not alone, and whatever it is, we're going to support you through this.